We have had CJ Moore on a lot because he's a great writer for The Athletic and writes fantastic stories and covers the Big 12 and has written stories about all the programs. And then there was that stretch when Baylor had their run for a national title last year, KU. And then on Tuesday morning, woke up and it was Kansas's switch, Baylor's answer, and the need for two thrones atop the Big 12. CJ Moore joins us now. Paul Craig and David Smoke on 365 Sports. And CJ, great story about Scott and having his appendix removed and still being at a game as an assistant coach with Jerome Tang running the show. You know, I brought this up a few minutes ago. There was a time when Baylor started to chip away and had some success and won some recruiting battles where guys like Bill Self and Rick Barnes, I think, might have been near the top of the, well, he must not be doing it right. It does seem like, do you feel like just Scott Drew has almost all but not forced himself, but has just gained so many people's respect because of how he's now done it?
Yeah. I think the days of questioning whether he could coach or he's just a recruiter, I think those are long gone.
CJ, I think people discounted how young he was when he got this job, right? Like he was very young and very early in the business. So, yeah, I'm sure there were times where it looked like he didn't know what he was doing because he was new at it and he didn't quite know what he was doing just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's grown with the job in a way, and you know, he's changed. He doesn't coach the same way he did back then. He doesn't do the same things schematically that he used to do, and you know, good coaches evolve. Bill Self's evolved. I mean, Kansas is playing different these last few years than it played in his early days. So, you know, great coaches, I think, evolve and adjust as they go, and Drew has, and you know, I think sometimes it's a good reminder. You get lost in the day-to-day of things, and you know, Baylor is you know, one of the best programs, one of the best teams in college basketball these last several years. But I thought Monday was just a good reminder of, like, let's just pull back a little bit and like remember where this program was, and the fact that they're you know, these KU matchups with Baylor kind of remind me of Kansas and Texas back when Barnes really had it going. And, you know, that was a great, those were great games in the Big 12, all like the ones you circled to watch. And now it's Kansas Baylor. And, you know, the way these coaches have gone at each other and the way they kind of, I think, circle this game and really, really throw into their preparation for it. I know that, you know, it was a quick turnaround, but still, like, both teams had a little something different for each other. And it turns into a chess match. I thought it was a fun one Monday, and that's kind of where I was coming from with my column.
CJ, when do you think that kind of flipped? That I don't know if you want to say it's the respect switch or just the however you want to refer to it, but when do you think that flipped? Was it Scott winning a national championship, or was it before that?
I think when this kind of turned into a rivalry and these games got really, really good between Kansas and Baylor, I think it was when Scott went into Allen Fieldhouse and won for the first time. I think that particular team and how good they were and how they just were able to dominate that game, I think that's what really got KU's attention. And I think ever since then, the games have been pretty good.
I was there at the post game, and I thought Bill Self showed a tremendous amount of patience. He kind of knows what he's working with. He even mentioned that the room for error is a lot less than it's been, either have or don't have. And when somebody asked, you know, about, you know, do you start jumping on them, getting on them, do you kind of hammer away at them? And he said, no, now's not the time. I thought that showed a tremendous amount of maturity and patience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see he's changed too. Like I think he's a calmer. He still really gets after him, you know, but I think he's a calmer version of himself. And you know, I'm around Kansas a lot, and all these crazy comebacks they've had, and you know, close games they've won. You know, the national championship game last year at K-State last year. You know, I've asked Self about, like, did you go nuts on him at halftime? But he's like, no, you know, you just tell, all right, didn't do very well. Here's what we got to do. And I think there's a calmness with him that he's really taken to another level as he's aged. And, his team doesn't freak out in those moments. And I don't think he's going to freak out in this particular losing streak, just like, Baylor was able to get it right after it had its little, losing streak at the beginning of the conference season.
The bench is struggling for Kansas right now. Everybody but Jalen Wilson. Of course, Grady Dick had a great name, but everybody at game the other night. But everybody was struggling. Do you think Bill Self is regretting not playing some of those younger guys more before the conference season, or was he did he have to slide into that spot based on circumstance?
Well, that's just, if he has a flaw, he wants to win every single game. And so development early isn't always, he might try some, you earn the time in practice, right? And those young guys, I just don't think have earned the time in practice. I think their biggest issue now, obviously depth is a concern, but they got to get their starters right. Like DeJuan Harris is not playing as well as he was several weeks ago. He's been pretty bad the last couple of games, and the Baylor game was as bad as I've ever seen him play. And then Kevin McCullough is really kind of in his head with this shot. And I think if they're the key for them is Grady Dick and Kevin McCullough. Obviously, I think Jalen Wilson's going to be pretty good, and he's surprisingly had his three best games, these three losses. Like he's on a heater right now. But they need the other guys to step up, and it can't be all Grady and Jalen Wilson. And I think they need McCullough to step up. They need DeJuan Harris to play well because his play is kind of tied to KJ Adams' success. So it's those other guys for Kansas that need to get going again.
CJ, you've seen what TCU's done. They just hammered Kansas on Saturday. They beat up yesterday Oklahoma. Texas is, with Rodney Terry, what we've discussed what he's been able to do to keep that thing not afloat, keep it going. 6-2 with their win against Oklahoma State. And then obviously what K-State, Jerome Tang, Iowa State. Who right now, if somebody can separate, is there somebody you think that might be able to get a couple of games or so ahead of everybody else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think this top six is really, really close. And, I think the teams with the best A game, or the team with the best A game might be TCU. But also they kind of have some stinkers thrown in there every once in a while. The way they struggle to shoot the three ball can lead to some inconsistency. Baylor and TCU are probably playing the best right now, but man, Iowa State was really good last night too. So I think it's just going to be kind of some ebbs and flows with those teams. That each one of them might go through a stretch where they struggle, just like Kansas is right now. But I think that top six is going to be really close, and I would bet at the end, somebody's probably tying for a conference championship, and somebody or a couple teams are just a game behind. I think it's going to be really tight till the very end.
Was it Ken Palm yesterday, Smokey? We had the numbers
2 days ago.
2 days ago that had the numbers.
4 teams, 11-7.
Yeah.
I think 2 teams are 10-8.
Yeah.
And then it's crazy.
It's switched now.
Yeah.
It's switched now. He has Texas and Iowa State at 12-6.
Okay.
And then K-State, Kansas, TCU all at 11-7, and Baylor at 10-8 are his final projections.
Just a
not necessarily in that order, but I think it'll be something like that by the end of it.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you how Kansas used to run away and hide. They'd win some close games, and then they go on a streak. And what Baylor did a couple of years ago, Kansas was a part of that too. All right, if Jonathan Tchamwa does come back and play, if he actually gets back and plays, is this going to be a CJ Moore special?
I've already talked to him.
Okay.
I visited with him when I was with the team in South Dakota about a month ago. And I watched him the other day, and he's made a lot of progress in that month. So I've got a lot of stories on my plate right now I got to churn out, but that's one of them. I'm definitely keeping my ear to what's happening in regards to him, because I want to make sure and get that out. And whenever he returns, it's going to be an incredible story, whether it's this season or the beginning of next year. He's just way ahead where he was supposed to be, and he's a pretty incredible young man.
CJ, how many stories are you juggling at one time? I'm sure you have one that's the deadline, and then maybe one or two like you've already talked to Jonathan. How is there like maybe a circle of things you have just in case you need to pop something?
I have like a record right now of stuff that I need to do that's not done. I think it's around 8 stories. So I'm juggling. They're all, not just little tiny ones. They're all some bigger ones. So I've given myself a busy next about month and a half before I can catch up.
CJ, just curious, we're kind of talking around Kansas and Baylor both here, but what were your thoughts in watching that game unfold the other night?
I thought it was a interesting, like I talked about earlier, schematically, I was fascinated by, Kansas coming out and not switching anything, using its center to it was basically switch 5. So, I mean, any kind of screening action it was switching where usually it's just they switch the first 4. So that was surprising to me. And then I thought Baylor was terrific early on. And I think that, I think Baylor has really progressed here in these last couple of weeks. And to me, the key is, Keontae, Adam, and LJ are like, we kind of take turns being really good. But Jalen Bridges and Langston Love, those guys coming on, kind of take them to another level. So I think you saw that the other night, that when those guys were playing well, in addition to a couple of the guards being hot, like this is a really, really hard team to deal with and a hard team to guard. So I think it was a really good night for Baylor. I think Kansas, at least showed something in coming back in the game. And like I said, Jalen Wilson is just playing at an incredible level right now. He kind of kept them at least close. So it was fun. I think the one in Lawrence will be fun as well. And, anytime those top 6 teams are in a game against each other, they're going to be really, really, must-watch TV this year.
CJ, good stuff. Thank you, as always. Great writer for The Athletic. CJ Moore, Kansas's switch, Baylor's answer, and the need for 2 thrones atop the Big 12. Kansas's switch, what he was talking about.